Washington Bullets.
Man, those Celtics teams, though, man.
Yeah, they were just... It's almost not fair, and the Knicks were good during that era, too, which is odd.
It was a good East Coast basketball.
Yep. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Dom DiTolla, sitting here with my co-host, Chris Quinn, and today we got a little bit of some NBA action.
Yeah, one of the NBA greats, gotta say.
One of the NBA greats, and kind of someone who's kind of lost in the shuffle as far as some of the greatest players that have ever existed in this league.
Well, this is something that I like that we do here at the Sports Experience Podcast, is we shine some light on some guys that maybe get mixed in the shuffle, you know?
Yeah, just kind of overlooked or not necessarily lost to history, but, you know, kind of not discussed where they should be.
Exactly. So we're talking about Wes Unseld.
Wes Unseld, one of the greatest centers of his era and possibly in NBA history. And
probably the shortest great center ever.
Yeah.
That's something that I always have to reiterate, is how short he was and how dominant he was as a center.
And how great he was during the era where the center was the most important position and he was giving away half a foot a night on the court.
Yeah.
And just still kicking ass.
Yeah, man. And we'll talk about his stats, but when you look at his rebounding, you're just like, what?
Yeah, it boggles the mind to watch him on tape, but just such amazing body control.
Oh, yeah. Probably one of the highest basketball IQs.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to be smart if you're giving away half a foot every night.
You have to. That's the only way you can beat Kareem.
Exactly. But Wes Unseld, born March 14th, 1946 in Louisville, Kentucky. His dad had quite the interesting life. He was a prize fighter, a construction worker, an oil man, and a baseball player for the Indianapolis Clowns, a team that the late Hank Aaron played for.
Yeah. Hank Aaron actually just recently passed away. So
yeah, and you look at all those jobs, you're like, his dad was a one-man Village People.
That's great.
I mean, when I read that, I'm like, this guy had probably a pretty interesting life.
Yeah, definitely. But definitely had that athlete's blood. You know?
Oh, definitely. And when you are from Louisville and that state in particular, basketball is kind of king.
Yes,
basketball
definitely.
is king. Went to Seneca High School in Louisville and two-time state champion in 1963 and 1964 on the hardwood.
Yeah, back-to-back state champions, which I think led... So we're in this time of racism.
Yeah.
Led the University of Kentucky to give him the first ever full academic scholarship to attend their university.
Yeah, to play on a sports team.
So he was the first black athlete to ever be offered that from the University of Kentucky, which he actually refused.
Yes, Adolph Rupp is still coaching there, and well, we're about 2 years away from them losing the NCAA tournament final to Texas Western / UTEP and Don Haskins, where it was all white against all black. But he decides, Wes, to stay home.
Yeah.
And go to an equally good program at a university that was already racially integrated.
Yeah, and he said that it was a huge, reason why he went there was Kentucky wasn't integrated, and they were like, hey, black guy, you should come here and be our one black guy.
Yeah.
We're going to call you Token. This is South Park, essentially.
Yeah.
And he was just like, no, I'm going to go somewhere where it's integrated, and I'm going to have like the time of my life in college.
Well, and he was getting pressured even by race leaders, you know, like people, civil rights leaders to go to Kentucky and integrate. And he's like, no, I just want to go to Louisville.
Yeah, especially as like a college, you just want to go and have some fun, play some basketball. And man, did he dominate when he went to Louisville. That's when you could see that he was probably the best center in college basketball.
I love how, because again, this is the time when freshmen weren't in any sport allowed to play right away.
Yep.
He was obviously good enough, but NCAA rules did not permit true freshmen to play.
Yep.
And on the freshman team, it said in 14 games he averaged 35.8 points per game and 23.6 rebounds.
It must have been so ridiculous on those freshman teams. When you watch it, it's almost like a boxer super outmatched by another boxer. You're just like, throw in the towel. That guy's, this is over.
All right, so here's the game plan. we're going to give it to Wes every time down the floor, and he's going to hip check a 5'11" freshman center from another team.
But then here's the guard saying, like, well, I'm going to shoot the ball because if I miss, he's just going to grab the rebound.
Oh, most definitely.
23 rebounds, almost 24 rebounds a game it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, they were Louisville, they've always been a competitive, NCAA program in basketball.
Yes.
I mean, basketball crazed state, them in Kentucky, good rivalry. And in his 3 years there that he played, they made a postseason trip every time. They went to the NIT in 1966, and then the tournament in 67 and 68.
Yeah.
3-time first team All Missouri Valley Conference from 66 to 68. And in 67 and 68, he was first team All-American for the entire country.
Which makes sense because he was just like, you could see the amount of points and rebounds. He averaged almost 20-20.
Yeah, and that's
for his 3 years.
Those are like Wilt Chamberlain numbers.
Exactly.
And he's half a foot shorter than Wilt Chamberlain, if not more.
We have to keep bringing this up. He was actually listed as 6'7", but then later in his career, he was like, I was always like 6'5 and a half, 6'6". And it was like, that's awesome.
And he was just, I know we brought this up before, he's like a Charles Barkley.
Oh, yes.
Not necessarily as offensive-minded as Charles, much more defensive-minded and better, but just the same kind of body type and same type of athleticism, which allowed him to compete when he's giving away so much size in terms of height and reach.
Yeah, this is the comparison when you get Wes Unseld, everyone says, geez, I'm getting mixed up. Everyone says he's Charles Barkley, or Charles Barkley's him remade, and you will never see guys like that again, 6'6", dominant in the paint. So it's such a great thing for him. Like, he was such a great rebounder. I'm going to bring it up over and over again, but like just like Charles Barkley, where they used boxing out and their basketball IQ essentially over this gigantic size. You know?
And he was very effective. I mean, in the 3 years that he played, the team won 60 games.
Yes.
So you're averaging 20 wins a season in a much shorter schedule. So everyone's recognizing this guy could be a star in the NBA.
Yes, for sure. So finishes up his college career and he goes to
the 1968 draft, and he's, considered, they don't have a lottery at the time, but he's considered, a top 5, top 10 guy.
Yep.
And he goes second overall in the NBA draft to the Washington, or should I say Baltimore Bullets.
The Baltimore Bullets at the time, they go to Washington in his tenure, but he also gets drafted by an ABA team.
Yeah, and we had brought this up in our ABA episode. There was a lot of collusion in the ABA draft.
It was almost so much collusion that you can't even call it collusion.
Yeah, it was more or less like, hey, let's see if we can get the best players in college to go to the teams that they want to, or a team that would be very attractive to them.
It was so much like that they didn't want players drafted by places they obviously wouldn't go.
Yeah, exactly, because then it would just be stupid, and
Yes.
they would just say, well, no, I'm going to play in the NBA. But the team that wants him, and he would probably want to go to, are one of the most successful ABA franchises, as we discussed, because they had a winning record every year they were in the ABA.
Yep.
The Kentucky Colonels.
Yeah, and I feel like if this was one of the teams that could have gotten him, they were them, because great ABA team and stays at home.
And in Louisville. I mean, that's where they played.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a match made in heaven, but, his dream is to play in the NBA. The Colonels offer him a better contract for way more money.
Yeah, way more lucrative is what the statement that I said was. It said way more lucrative. And I was like, geez. But that's the way ABA picked up these stars in that era.
Oh, definitely. And he goes number 2 overall to the Baltimore Bullets. Number 1 overall, interestingly enough, was Elvin Hayes, who goes to the San Diego Rockets. But I'm sure he'll come back into play later as a future teammate of Wes's over there in the Beltway area. But right off the bat, I mean, once he goes to Baltimore, he is just amazing.
Yes.
And during his first the first few games of his NBA tenure, he has 29 rebounds in one of the games.
Yes, I saw that.
Are you kidding? Fresh out of college, and you're just playing against grown-ass men and being more of a grown-ass man than them?
Well, he just proved right away that he was ready to be this dominant center. And I want to talk about the Bullets in this time. They were the worst team in the league, or at least in their division.
Yeah, they finished last.
And then he comes in this first year, he essentially turns everything around.
Yeah, no, I mean, his first season as an average had 18.2 rebounds a game.
Yep.
18.2. This guy is 22 years old and averaging 18.2 rebounds a game.
22, 6'6", and just grabbing everything.
And the team wins 57 games. It's one of the greatest turnarounds in NBA history.
Yeah, they went from the lowest in their division to winning their division title.
And he's so good at, such a great player. He wins Rookie of the Year, obviously.
And then on top of that,
he wins the league MVP.
Which, I mean, it's such a great thing for him coming right out of college to show everybody how good he is.
And the only player who has ever done that in league history, there's only one guy, and it's Wilt the Stilt and his awesome shorts.
Well, it just kind of makes sense because this was such a center-driven league at this time, and we see how great Wes was he was Rookie of the Year and MVP. The only person to ever do that was Wilt. So, I mean, you got to give it up to him off the bat.
And the league has a brand new star. They have a brand new star. And the Eastern Conference at this time is completely center-driven because you have Wilt the Stilt, Willis Reed, and then in Milwaukee, you have a dude named Lou Alcindor, future Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah,
And Wes isn't in the mold of those guys, which makes it even cooler, I think.
I agree, because we kind of see this mold of centers coming out, and Wes is like, hey, I can do what they do looking like this.
Yeah, and to his credit, which is so absolutely fantastic, is they make 4 NBA finals in an 8-year period.
Yeah.
Like, the Bullets in a very competitive Eastern Conference.
That's what I want to say. Coming out of the East, it's wild.
He is the guy for them. He is the guy, the team leader. Maybe not their best player, because obviously you have Earl the Pearl on some of those earlier teams, and not the most dominant player for them, but he's the team leader, and he is the one that is going to eventually take you to the promised land.
Well, what I heard from his teammates of that era was he was the guy that did everything that was intangible. So to get you to that championship. So obviously there's great players throughout the whole league. He's that guy that's going to do everything that's not on the stat sheet to literally get you to that next level.
Exactly. No, and I mean, he was just he was a Windex man. That's the best way to describe him. And a lot like Charles Barkley, the way he would use his body and the way that he would, kind of be able to work the paint is in 12 of his 13 seasons, he averaged over 10 rebounds a game. I think that is just amazing.
Yeah.
And not only that, not necessarily a scoring machine, but in 6 of his 12 seasons, he had over 10 points a game. He was almost a double-double machine for them.
Yeah, he really was, in this era, a unbelievably reliable center. And I want to bring up something that you won't see on any stat sheet, like I was saying, is the screens.
The screens, man. Oh, God.
And that was back when you could set almost blind screens, essentially.
Yeah, it almost like crackback block screens.
Yes.
And he knew exactly when to set them, and he knew how to set them hard to where they weren't illegal at the time.
And literally they were saying, like, you were running into a brick wall. Like, there was no give when you would run into them.
Well, I mean, his 2 nicknames that I had read about were just absolutely perfect, because they called him the Wide U, because he was listed at 245, but I would say he's pushing it to about 270, especially later in his career, or the Big Oak Tree.
I thought the Big Oak Tree was pretty accurate, because if you see any of those screens, they just, guys just fall. And there was guards talking about when they would play Washington, you would hear the call as soon as Wes would come out of the paint. You would just be like, screen, 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 or whatever, because it would take you out of the game.
Yeah, and you see your life flash before your eyes.
Exactly.
Like, well, I'm going to get a concussion tonight. But Willis Reed had a great quote about Wes where he had said, no, he just abused you.
Yeah.
And not like in an illegal sense, but like if you were going to play Wes Unseld for 40 minutes a game and line up one-on-one with him because, there's no zone defense, you're going to feel it. a lot more than a lot of other players, even centers that are much taller than him. And the Bullets, I mean, he completely turns the franchise around just with his presence, because by 71, they're in the NBA Finals.
Well, I feel like it's a lot like Dobie and those Indian teams where they kind of have this one moment where they're good and then they're just never good again.
Pretty much. And then Wes, during his prime, I mean, this is when it happens.
Yeah.
71, they go to the finals. They lose to the Bucks, led by Kareem. But then in 75, they go all the way back and they play the Warriors, end up losing
and
lose again. But 78 is kind of the year that they everything kind of comes together.
Yep.
And before I talk about that, I know you had brought up the screens. One of the best aspects of his game, which you don't see on a stat sheet, even though he does get credit for some assists for a big man, he did put up some really quality numbers in that department, is he was one of the greatest outlet passers for fast breaks off of the rebounds that he's getting. Just such a high basketball IQ, the way he could contort his body in the air, but know where his teammates were to set up fast breaks and get the offense rolling like immediately off of a miss. Hey everybody, just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
And you wouldn't see necessarily a bunch of assists, but he would literally be the pass before the assist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to open up the floor.
To open up the floor. And in his era, people say he was the greatest of that. And then I saw somebody talking about, he was just like talking about basketball, throughout. And they were just like, well, Wes was the greatest outlet passer ever. And it's like, that makes so much sense. If you watch any of those videos, he literally grabs the board and is already decided, like, this ball's going here.
Because he knows where all four other positions are off of a specific play. It's like he's
with
2
his
steps
back
ahead.
to him. Yeah.
He's just like, I know where it's going.
Yep.
And people would always used to say that he was so strong and so, like, stout, because as a kid, his father was a construction worker and he'd help him do construction.
Yep.
So he'd climb up these ladders with bricks and mortar and just be like grown-ass manning it as a tween.
Well, just the balance that he had. And he was one of the first guys to not bring the ball down to his midsection and then pass. He was one of the first guys to keep it up.
Yep.
And you see a ton of guys do it now, but like, just wasn't done back then.
No, and I mean, that's a testament to his intelligence,
yes,
his basketball
100%.
IQ. It's just like, well, why do I have to take these extra steps if I know where the ball's going to go, if I can get it to somebody tenths of a second faster?
And it made those Bullets teams so much fun to watch.
Oh my God, it's probably the last time they've been fun to watch.
Yes, unfortunately.
But he was just a great all-around player, like in 75, leading the league in rebounds, 76, leading the league in field goal percentage. But 78 was really the year.
It was finally the year that the Bullets took it.
Yeah, and it was probably one of their down years, if you want to think about it in this era. I think they only won, I think they were 44-38 in the regular season.
How good the East Coast was, because I feel like even if you were coming into the playoffs, you were beaten up.
Yeah.
Like you weren't getting to those finals whole, essentially. So in 78, they go up against Seattle, back when Seattle had a team.
Yep.
And they play the Supersonics and end up beating them.
In the 7 games. It's one of the best finals ever.
Yeah.
And guess who's finals MVP?
You tell me.
Wes Unseld.
And he had a double-double, right?
Yeah, he had a double-double for the finals.
Yeah.
I mean, it was their third trip there, and I think him and the rest of the team were like, if it's not this year, who the hell knows? Because at this point,
he's getting a little old.
He's 10 years, he's not quite the guy averaging 18.2 as a rookie, but he's still the heart and soul of this Bullets team. Baltimore, then the Capital Bullets, and now they're the Washington Bullets. But yeah, they end up beating the Sonics for the franchise's first and still to this day only championship.
Something else I want to say about him, which you kind of brought up, was his field goal percentage was always so high, which has to be so great to kind of dish it in and be like, well, he's not going to take a shitty shot.
Or, you know
what I mean?
He'll kick it back out to somebody if he doesn't see what he likes. I mean, just a very smart shot selection.
Yep. And he also had a high games per season. Like he almost played like 75 games every single season.
Oh, he was a warhorse in there.
Yes.
Like, I mean, Kareem would always say that he was the hardest guy to play against because he was like a roadblock in the paint. which is a really good description because it's not that tall, but he's enough in your way to just piss you off and throw you off your game to where you're just like, oh man, I can't do it.
Yeah, and I feel like he would just constantly beat guys down, and he just was so great with his IQ and his ability to box out. I mean, that's why the rebounds are so high.
No, and I think one of the most overlooked things, especially for this franchise, is because now you don't associate the Bullets/Wizards or whatever they want to call themselves now with like winning, is in his 13 seasons in the NBA, they went to the playoffs the first 12.
Yeah.
And they won their division 7 times.
Yeah, they became a winning franchise.
Yeah, they finally had an identity, and he's the guy that gave them their identity. And, you know, with him and Elvin Hayes and those guys winning that 78 championship, you were thinking like, oh, man, good times are really ahead, because the following season they make it back to the finals and have a rematch with the Sonics.
But this time the Sonics take it to them.
Take it to them, and they win in 7 games, I believe. So
it's a really good back-to-back finals there where you have two teams, you know, essentially meeting each other in 2 finals. It's really great, But
that's what's so cool is that in an 8-year period, 4 of those years, it's Washington.
It's not Washington,
It's not Boston. It's not New York. I mean, it's Washington, a team with, previous to Unseld, no history to speak of, no success or winning.
Post-Unseld, no success.
Yeah.
So let's get into that because he retires 81.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's kind of obvious that his body's done.
Yeah, I mean he's
33 or some shit like
33.
that.
I mean those are some hard minutes because I think they said he averaged like 36 minutes a game.
Yes.
And in that era, you're either beating the hell out of people or getting the hell beat out of you. So I mean, he's an old 33.
Exactly, and that's what I said earlier, that he played pretty much 75 games a year on average, and then played like almost the entire game all the time. So I mean, he definitely was that workhorse. So he sticks around with the Bullets, though. This is something that I have to say. He's been with the Bullets franchise for like 30 years, 40 even.
Yeah, I mean, he starts as like a scout and an assistant in the front office like immediately after he's done.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of the coolest thing about him is that you see this still, you know, with players is they'll go to a city that they're not from necessarily, you know, but they just are so embraced, they fall in love with it, and they decide to stay and make, you know, kind of a difference in the community. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is towards the end of his playing career in '79, he helped set up the Unseld School in Southwest Baltimore.
With his wife.
His wife and daughter were actually teachers at the school. And Wes, of course, you know, he's working at the school, and he's the head basketball coach.
Yep.
And it's, you know, they have daycare and a nursery there, but it's also a private school to help impoverished people make their lives better. It's a K-8 curriculum. I mean, it's still there.
It's still going. It's still a great school for people that need it, and it's one of those things that you see these athletes that give back to their communities, and they do it in such a wonderful way.
Yeah, I mean, and they're not, I mean, they've made it their new home.
Yes.
I mean, he's from Louisville, but, you know, that's his second home. That's where he built his life. The second act of his life was in the Washington area.
Yeah.
And I think that was just so great. And, of course, he's recognized by all his peers as one of the greatest ever, because, I mean, when you have the best centers probably who've ever played saying he's their toughest competition in 1996 when the NBA has their 50th anniversary team, he's named to it as one of the 50 greatest players ever.
And I can't dispute that. I feel like this is so correct because he gets overlooked, but if you look at the top 50 players, he has to be in there.
Oh, absolutely. It's not like he just waltzed in to a ready-made team like the Celtics or even the Knicks of that era. He went to Washington
and turned a franchise around.
I mean, he completely turned them around. And like we were saying before, with the screens, with the outlet passing, like his stats were good. I mean, he averaged 10.8 points per game, 14 rebounds a game, and almost 4 assists a game for his career.
So a double-double with almost that 5. Everybody looks at that double-double with that 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That if you're a point guard, 5 rebounds or steals. But it's such a great... He's the greatest bullet I would say, ever, even though I'm a huge, Earl the Pearl fan. But I'm just saying, like...
Yeah, but he stayed on like Earl the Pearl. He
exactly.
played his whole career there.
He played his whole career. He was without a doubt the greatest bullet ever.
Oh, most definitely. And, while those stats on paper are just like, oh, okay, they're good, it's all of the other stuff that he did for that team and the leadership. And community.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why it's kind of sad to think that a lot of casual basketball fans don't know how truly awesome he was and for how awesome he was for so long.
Yeah. So he stays with the Wizards, and this is kind of like the path that a lot of ex-players take to becoming a coach is they scout, they,
work in the front office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Assistant coach, maybe. I don't even know if he did assistant coach, actually.
No, he was in the front office when they finally brought him into
coach
into the fold to coach. Yeah.
And that was in 91, I believe.
I believe it was 88.
88, okay.
He came in 88. It was the first, he kind of came in midway through that season.
Yep.
But they still ended up making the playoffs, and they ended up losing to the Bad Boys in the first round. They had lost the first 2 games, but then won the next 2 to force a Game 5, but didn't end up winning it. And he had coached from 88 to 94. Unfortunately for him,
Never made the playoffs.
Made the playoffs again. The team kind of folded all around him, unfortunately. And
well, then I think the franchise made the correct decision, because I think this is right around when Michael Jordan came in. Or did Michael Jordan come in the 2000s?
He came in later in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Wes was named general manager in 1996.
Yes.
So I think Michael Jordan started playing for him in 2001.
Yes. Okay.
And
that seems right.
Wes, I think they had made the playoffs once when they had that Weber and Juwan Howard team.
Yep.
I think 96, 97.
And that was when they changed to the Wizards.
Yes, that was when they changed to the Wizards,
yep.
Exactly. But 96 to 2003 was general manager of the team. And he's one of the NBA's good guys, though. One thing I wanted to bring up is great relationships with all his teammates, one of which named him godfather of his son.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Stan Love was his Bullets teammate, who is the father of current NBA star Kevin Love.
Yeah. And
Kevin's not only his godson, Kevin's middle name is Wesley, specifically for Wes Unseld.
Yeah, because they were such good friends and teammates. And yeah.
It's who would you want to be your godfather, honestly?
I know.
Like, you're ever in a jam, call the wide U.
Yeah.
But no, he ends up going through 2003 with them, and then kind of steps away to live the rest of his life retirement-wise. His son actually was a basketball player, Wes Jr.
Yeah, and isn't he a coach?
Yeah, he's a coach.
For the Nuggets?
Yeah, for the Nuggets. Since he's been an assistant coach in the NBA for about a decade.
Yeah.
He's been with the Nuggets, for about 5-6 years, I think, since 2015. Was a point guard at Johns Hopkins, so kind of staying in the D.C. area. Didn't really play any pro ball, but yeah, he's been a very successful assistant coach.
Yeah, definitely. We might even see him become a pro here pretty soon. A
head coach,
coach. And it's so interesting because I know some assistant coaches have absolutely no interest in making that jump, and some do. So we'll see if he makes that leap. I want to bring up, he actually also was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 88, and that was the year that he began coaching.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I mean, and that was the thing, is all the voters, because he's still fresh in everybody's minds. I think that was probably his first, if not only second year of eligibility to be named to the Hall of Fame. It's just so cool. So cool for him. And then the College Basketball Hall of Fame, too, I think in 2006.
Yeah. Which was a little late. I'm not going to lie, but that's all right.
College Hall of Fames are kind of weird.
They are.
Like, and because he never won a national title at Louisville or anything. But just those freshman game stats alone, like, I wish I could have watched those.
Oh, I bet they were so ridiculous. I bet he was just so dominant that the other team was just like throwing up their hands, shit like that.
Just like, what are we supposed to do?
Exactly.
But no, he eventually, lives out the rest of his life, and then kind of starts having some health issues within the last few years, which has been kind of unfortunate for him because, when you see interviews of the best players of his era, that's all they talk about was what a tough SOB he was, just what a great competitor and what a great player he was.
Yeah, and a great teammate. I feel like that's what every single teammate that he had brought up was that, like, you wanted him on your team.
And I think a lot of that speaks to is that he goes to a bad team to begin with.
Yeah.
And he's not surrounded by like veterans who, can show him the right way to do things. It's just, he figured it out.
And shows,
At the very beginning, he figured it out, and he becomes that veteran for future players.
Yeah, he sets the example.
Exactly.
Right off the bat. And he's just like, this is how we're going to do it.
Not like a talker, not a me guy, but just someone everybody knows, okay, this is Wes's team. Wes is our guy.
Yeah.
And that's why he was such a great research topic, because of that kind of attitude that he had, such a great team player and everything. But very sadly, unfortunately, 2020 taking basically everyone.
Yeah, Jesus.
During the summer, June 2nd, 2020, he had been having some health issues, and he had finally succumbed to pneumonia, unfortunately. And really, really sad. I mean, I think he was only, 64 years old.
Yeah. He definitely died a little bit too early.
Or 74 years old,
74?
excuse me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, 74 of pneumonia. But, they had all the interviews after he died for guys that he played with and played against, and nobody really had a negative thing to say.
No. Yeah, he had one of the best, you got to give it up to him, one of the best NBA careers because of what he did to this Bullet franchise. And I'm saying that throughout. So he wasn't the best coach, but he definitely has been with that franchise his entire career.
Yeah, like when you think Washington Bullets / Wizards or whatever, it's who's the best player in franchise history. He's the only one you bring up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teams you can make a conversation for like a group of guys. He's the one you point to, and there's no argument against it.
Well, the other guys you would bring up had great careers on other teams.
Exactly.
He had the great career with the Bullets. He was the one guy.
And even when he coached and did his front office stuff, still that franchise.
Yep.
Still nobody else. Mr. Washington Bullet. But, he was a great research topic, and, the Charles Barkley almost of his era.
Yeah. I like the...
With the ring, though.
Oh, dang.
The ring. Sorry, Charles, but...
I like the Mr. Washington Bullet. I thought that was pretty good.
Oh, hell yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everybody. This is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say, give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.